Good morning. Today is the 25th day of First Adar, the 5th of March. We're holding by the third reading of Vayak'hel. Luckily this year we have them separate, so we get a chance to actually look at each one of the parshas. Otherwise it would be would be long and we'd almost be done with Vayak'hel. In any case, in the beginning of today's reading, let's read it in English. We're looking at Exodus 35:30. Moses said to the Israelites, "Look, God has singled out by name Betzalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah. He has endowed him with a divine spirit, with knowledge, insight, and inspiration, and with the talent for all types of craftsmanship, to devise woven designs, and to work in gold, silver, and copper, and with the art of setting gems and carving wood, and all kinds of skilled crafts." So Moses is appointing Betzalel to be the chief artisan of the tabernacle. And the first thing it says about him is that he knows how to devise, he knows how to work with gold, silver, and copper. Now there's a lot to say about gold, silver, and copper. There's a lot to say about each one of the materials that he brought for the tabernacle, but these are obviously the three most important ones: gold, silver, and copper. The way we're going to approach this is we're actually going to, again, this is intrinsic to gold, silver, and copper, but we're going to go to next week's parsha and see what it says there in the very beginning. So I want you to turn to Exodus 38:24. What happens there is that they do an accounting of all the material that was brought for the tabernacle. And the first things that they take an accounting of is obviously, like we just said, the gold, the silver, and the copper. So we're looking again at Exodus 38:24. And it says like this: "All the gold that was used for the work in all the holy work, that is the gold of the wave offering, came to 29 talents. A talent is like 40-something kilograms, I believe. And 730 shekels of the sacred shekels." Here he writes about 1,404 kilograms of gold. Then it says, it continues in chapter 38, "The silver from those of the community who had been counted came to 100 talents, and 1,775 shekels of the sacred shekels, a beka per head, which is a half shekel of the sacred shekel, for all those of 20 years and over who had passed through the census, 603,550 in all. The 100 talents of silver were used for casting the bases for the tabernacle and the bases for the curtain. 100 bases from 100 talents, 1 talent for each base. And with the 1,775 shekels, he made hooks for the pillars, overlaid their tops, and banded them. And then the copper of the wave offering came to 70 talents and 2,400 shekels, which he had made, from which with it he made the bases for the screen at the entrance of the tent of meeting, the copper altar and its copper grate, and all the altar's utensils, the base for the courtyard all around, and the bases at the entrance of the courtyard." And he goes on and on and on to describe everything that was done with the copper. Now what did we just see? We saw that in terms of telling us how much was collected, we know gold 29 talents, silver 70 talents, and copper a lot more. But then in terms of what was done with each thing, it doesn't tell us what was done with the gold. Only the silver and the copper. Nowhere does it tell us what was done with the gold. We know what was done with the gold. It's not such a big secret, but it's not listed here. They made the Ark of the Covenant with it. They made the table of showbread. They made the menorah. These were the most inner utensil, the inner vessels of the sanctuary. But why doesn't it tell us that this is what was made, whereas it makes a big deal of telling us what was done with the silver and the copper? So what we'd like to look at today is one way of understanding this, And again, I said that gold, silver, and copper, they represent many, many things. But one of the most interesting ways to think about them is that gold, silver, and copper correspond to the intellect, the emotions, and the habitual faculties. So gold is like the intellect, the silver is the emotions, and copper is the habitual faculties. So if we would just say it in sfirot, we would say gold is chokhmah bina dat, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And silver is chesed gvura tiferet, the loving kindness, might, and beauty. And copper is the lowest third, the habitual sfirot, netzach hod yesod, victory, acknowledgement, and foundation. Now, what does this give us? What can we do with this? So first of all, it's very interesting. There's a concept, if you were following the morning classes. So in the morning we were talking about that everything divides into a third and two-thirds. And whenever in Kabbalah something is divided in half, it's actually divided into a third and two-thirds. So we were talking there about Za, about the masculine side receiving the top third, and the feminine counterpart receiving two-thirds, the bottom two-thirds. The difference between them is that the top third is always hidden and or concealed. The bottom two-thirds is usually revealed. And what we mean to say by this is that, for instance, when we talk about, let's say I'm looking at someone, I can't see their thoughts, I can't see their inner intellectual process. On the other hand, it's very hard to hide emotion, and it's literally impossible to hide actions or habits. Those are completely out in the open. So there's this concept in Kabbalah that becomes a very important staple in Hasidic thought, that the top third is revealed, is concealed, and the bottom two-thirds are revealed. Now, when you look at the body, it doesn't maybe look that way, but that's not the point. The point is not the body, the point is the faculties. What else do we get from this? We get from this that most people can make sure that they control their mind. Most people can. It's true that if I tell you to not to think of a white elephant, you'll probably only think of a white elephant, but that's not the point. The point is that if you need to concentrate on something, you need to deal with one thing and not something else, you can. But when it comes to emotions, and certainly actions, it's much harder to hide them away, to sequester them. If I have a certain feeling in my heart, and I don't want to feel that way, it's almost impossible for me to tell myself, okay, don't feel that way. You have to have so much self-control. The same is true if I'm a creature of habit, and we all are, and I'm used to doing something a certain way. And now I'm asked to actually change it. Very, very difficult. I have very little control there. It's out in the open, as it were. It's already expressed. And to be able to change it takes a lot of effort. So these are just a couple of examples about this division of a third and two-thirds, and gold being different, in this case, than silver and copper. So gold is like the thought, silver is like our emotions, and silver in Hebrew literally means longing, yearning for something. Kisufin, kesef is kisufin. And nechoshet, the copper, is the habitual faculties that make our actions run the way that they do. Why wasn't gold accounted for later when they enumerate everything that was done with the materials? So it's hidden. That's one easy way of saying it. It was just hidden. But a deeper way of thinking about it is a threesome of terms that was coined in the Middle Ages. And they're called Tov, Arev, Mo'il. Good, pleasant, and useful. And this was coined separately completely from the Kabbalistic stream. It was not connected at all to it. But it was used by the medieval sages to describe exactly the same thing. The intellect is considered to be good. And actually, I don't know where gold came from, but it's pretty close, gold. The emotions are considered to be pleasant. They're supposed to be pleasant. That's the whole point of having emotions. And the habits are meant to be useful. In other words, you keep a thought because it's good. You keep your emotions that are pleasant. You try to hold on to your emotions that are pleasant. And you sustain habits that are useful for you, something that you can use. But there's a very interesting concept. It says in the sages that gold is not from this world. There was no point in creating it. It's too precious. It's too special. So they ask, so why did God create gold? And he says, because it was meant to be used in the temple, was meant to be used in the tabernacle. That's its reason for existing in this world. What do we mean by that? So you probably heard that in the Middle Ages, the alchemists wanted to turn lead into gold. So there are people, I understand, that understand this literally, and I'm sure there were alchemists who understood this literally. But the real meaning was that they wanted to turn negative character traits into good ones. Or, the way we're saying it now, is if gold is related to our intellect, then it's the transformation of untruth into truth. Things that are not, that we may be making a mistake about, into things that we can be certain of. That is what the intellect runs on. And the idea here is that it doesn't need a reason. In other words, when the Torah tells us about what was done with the copper, what was done with the silver, it's telling us this is what it's good for. Pleasant is good for so-and-so. Useful is obviously good for so-and-so. But when it comes to good, the good is in and of itself worthwhile. You don't have to ask, what is the good good for? The good is the purpose. It is the goal. In other words, what it's saying here is that gold was created in order to be fashioned into the vessels of the tabernacle, the vessels of the temple, in order to express God's goodness. Meaning that the pursuit of godliness does not have to be for an ulterior motive. In fact, it shouldn't be. The good, godliness, should be pursued, should be clung to, should be cleaved to for its own sake. That's how the good is. The good doesn't have to tell me, what do you do with the good? The Torah doesn't tell me what was done with the gold that was collected for the tabernacle. I know what was done, but that's not the point, because it's giving a list of what was done with the other materials. But it doesn't tell us about the good to teach us this lesson. That when it comes to the good itself, when it comes to the pursuit of Torah knowledge, the Torah itself, you don't need to give a justification what you did with it. It doesn't really matter what you did with it. The same thing, this is a very big issue today in Israel with wanting to take yeshiva students out of their learning. And there's an understanding that is very hard for a lot of people to accept, that Torah is learned for its own sake. Even if the person who's learning it will never become a rabbi, he will never serve the public. The good is good in and of itself. The same thing is with our good in ourselves, the way that we are. We should be good without any ulterior motive. I'm not good so that I'm a better servant of society. I'm not good because that way I'll be a better father. I'm good because the good justifies itself. It doesn't need to give a reason. It doesn't need to give a list of what was done with it, because the good is something that stands by itself like gold. You don't need to do anything with it. Now, this is the same thing is true of gold. Gold has intrinsic value even if you don't do anything with it. Silver, supposedly you had to make coins out of it. Copper, same thing. You had to use it in something. Gold, even though we use it today in industry, and actually a lot of the gold that is in the world is being used for industry, but really gold is something that has intrinsic value in and of itself, without any need, meaning if you have a gold bullion, a chunk of gold, and it sits there and it has value in and of itself. You don't have to do anything with it. So the same thing is true of anything that's likened to gold. The good is good in and of itself. It has value in and of itself. And the intellect, the Torah intellect, has value in and of itself, even if it's never used for anything at all, for any other purpose. That's it for today. Thanks for joining. Hope to see you tomorrow.